So the way our liturgical year and our readings go is kind of interesting this week, and interesting or confusing. Interesting is the Minnesota word. This is our last Sunday of Easter, and a lot of our first readings and second readings have to do with that kind of linear progression of now this is post-resurrection, and the disciples are kind of trying to figure out how to live as a community. And that's, the liturgical year that we're following in that kind of linear, like Advent, we're waiting for Jesus, Jesus is born, Jesus has his ministry, Jesus dies, rises again. And that's that liturgical year that we're following. Our Gospels, more often what we're reading during the Easter season, are actually part of the Last Supper discourse. So it's all of these kind of long, and especially with John, a little cryptic readings about what Jesus is entering into, and then what that means for his disciples, and what it will be like after Jesus' death and resurrection. So it's kind of this toggling back and forth between these times. But really this whole Easter season, both in that kind of linear liturgical sense and in that Last Supper, is really all about Jesus getting ready to say goodbye and to transition to this next life, and to prepare the disciples for the goodbye. And it's a really long goodbye. And it made me think that maybe Jesus is a Minnesotan, because from what I know about Minnesotans, you guys are good at long goodbyes. So we've had these 7 weeks of goodbyes, of preparing for goodbyes. And throughout it all, Jesus' followers understandably don't like it. They don't like his mentioning of goodbyes or these transitions, because this is their beloved teacher. They have left their whole lives and livelihood to follow him. And now not only are they experiencing deep grief and shock about what the thought of his departure might mean, but also grief and shock and fear and confusion about what it means for their own identity. What does it mean to follow your teacher if your teacher's no longer around to follow? And this is so true for us too. True as the global church, true individually, true as our community as Spirit of Hope. We are in general not good at goodbyes or transitions, or that kind of uncomfortable waiting period between things ending and things beginning. Because it's in those times that our core identity is often shaken, or at least what we think is our core identity is shaken. Day in and day out, our bodies are wired for stability and safety. We seek out patterns and predictability. We're biologically wired to stay in what is comfortable and known. Yet, what we know is that predictability and consistency can also lead to thoughtless habitual action, those patterns our brains just make so well, or stagnation, just being in this spot. And it's understandable that we crave stability, and some stability is certainly good, right? Like, we need safety, we need home, we need places of comfort. But the truth is, that we all know this, that we live in a world of impermanence, of constant change. But the disciples, and us as well, are really good at trying to stop that change from happening. The disciples tried to convince Jesus over and over again, no, let's not do this, okay? He took them up to a mountaintop, and they were like, you know what, let's just stay here. This is good. Like, there's no reason to go back down this mountaintop. When he said they were going into Jerusalem, they're like, that's probably not a good idea, Jesus. Like, let's just stay. This is going just fine. But each and every time, Jesus says, no, going this way. I'm going this way. There's no turning back. A transition is happening. 7 weeks ago, at Jesus' resurrection, we met the apostles hiding in the upper room. That long goodbye had finally happened, and there the disciples were left. They were left grieving, grieving the death of their teacher, who they did not yet know had risen from the dead, and also grieving that identity. What was their purpose now? Did those miracles ever really happen? Maybe we should just go back to being fishermen. I imagine each and every one of us has experienced some form of that in our lives. That shock and grief, the grief of losing a beloved in our lives, or a major loss or transition, where we're in this place of grief and also just this sudden, what is my purpose? What is the meaning? What am I doing? Those are all such normal parts of what it means to be a human. I remember those first days and even the first couple of months after I got laid off from being the mother-baby NICU chaplain. I loved that work so much. I was good at it. I'd been there 3 years, and I was starting to imagine, like, maybe I'd be one of those chaplains that's like at the same hospital for 30 years, and, like I become part of like this institution, And that's what it felt like on a Thursday afternoon, and by a Friday morning, it was all gone, right? That whole identity, gone, without an explanation. I was mad, so mad. And so frustrated, especially when people would tell me, oh, something better will come around, right? There'll be something better on the next corner. I didn't want better. I already had good. I wanted to go back to the good, right? And yet here I was confronted with this terrible truth that slaps us all in the face every once in a while, that the only consistency is that everything is always changing. Our Western culture, in particular, struggles with the reality of endings, with transitions, with goodbyes, with death. We like to pretend that it will never end. We are fed all this consumeristic messages that we can achieve perfection here and now, whether it's perfection in our job, our body composition, how our home looks. We can find the mountaintop and we can stay there. And because we're fed that and we like how that feels, right? It feels good to think that we can get to some mountaintop and stay there. We are ill-equipped when we come down that mountaintop or when we're shoved off that mountaintop. And we're tempted to call all those endings, those transitions, those goodbyes, failures. Or we might try to ignore that an ending is happening. Or maybe that it never did happen in the first place. Or maybe we quickly try to fill that ending with something else. There's suddenly this hole in our life, and we're like, oh, well, what else can we put in there? How can we fill up that hole, right? And maybe that's why Easter is 7 weeks long, and why Jesus' goodbye is so long. Because he wants to show us what it means to sit in this, to wait, to let that grief exist, to be uncomfortable. Because like the song says, every new beginning is some other beginning's end. And there's a lot to learn in that period, sitting in that waiting period. And it's in that emptiness, in that space, in that gap, that we can start to hear God's promise. Because we see in the disciples, in all their fear and frenzy and how good the mountaintop feels, that they don't always hear what Jesus is saying. Because while Jesus is always saying that he's transitioning, that he's leaving, he's also telling them over and over again, but this is good. This is good because you're going to go out in the world. You're going to do even greater things than me. And I am going to send the Spirit to you. You will never be alone. You will never be without me. It's going to be in this way that's much bigger than you could ever understand. But they miss that so often. But that's what we find in this gap, in this missing time. That's what the disciples in that early community were slowly realizing. Oh, the Spirit is here. And that the good news is going to go beyond us. Go beyond the walls of Jerusalem, beyond the concepts of space and time. Coming all the way to us in May of 2026. God would not be bound by space and time or by the person of Jesus in a historical location of Jerusalem. God would be known and knowable everywhere, and creativity and newness would abound, all because of this long goodbye, because Jesus was going. Just a little earlier in the book of John, during the same long goodbye, Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Creator." I have always loved that verse, because in it there's both this great challenge to us, but great expansiveness, that there will be things that we do that are greater than even what we've heard in our gospel stories of Jesus, and that it will keep going forward and forward and forward. If those disciples had stayed with Jesus, if they had convinced Jesus to stay, then none of this would exist, right? They could not have imagined some far-off land with people gathered, celebrating just as they celebrated, seeking to live lives that bring peace and goodness to the world. None of this could happen if Jesus hadn't said that goodbye. Because only the Spirit could have known it, that thousands of years of constant change and transition and goodbyes would make today possible. And as we prepare for to celebrate the Spirit coming upon us next week in Pentecost, I wonder what spaces of goodbyes and transitions and endings we might be living in right now, or maybe ones that are long ago, but we never really had the chance or the space to just be in them. That we could take some time to stop fighting or ignoring or replacing that emptiness and that goodbye, and just wait in it. Wait in it in prayer, in meditation, maybe with a trusted friend and or a therapist, and just be in those goodbyes. Because goodbyes are hard, but there is no shame in them. The disciples were rebuked a lot by Jesus. Jesus said, "No, you guys don't quite have this right." But he never shamed them, right? He just kept teaching them, kept trying to help them understand. And that's what he does for us too. To just wait, to see what's growing. Where is the Spirit expanding and creating new beginnings? There will always be transitions and goodbyes, but there will always be newness. The Spirit will always be at work in us and in the world, and that is forever the promise of that long goodbye.